Good evening, and thanks for joining us tonight in AZPM's Studio B. I'm Jim Ninsel, host of AZ Illustrated Politics, our weekly analysis and commentary on local, state, and national affairs. On tonight's show, we'll talk about President Barack Obama's visit to Arizona this week and catch up with the latest on immigration reform. Plus, we'll look at a dust-up between Democratic gubernatorial hopeful Fred DuVal and the Arizona Republican Party, and we'll say goodbye to Jeff Smith, the legendary local columnist who passed away this week at his home in Patagonia. That's all coming up on AZ Illustrated Politics, but first, a look at today's top stories.
As Tucson city officials prepare for the primary election, it's still unclear whether Tucson voters will get to weigh in on citizen initiatives in the November election. This year, two campaigns tried to get on the ballot for November. One failed to qualify. It would have asked voters to get rid of traffic cameras. The other could change the city retirement system. That initiative, however, is in court. The judge in that case has until September 16th to decide whether or not it gets on the ballot. That's the day the city must print ballots for the general election. And Tucson Mayor Jonathan Rothschild is trying to double the number of volunteers needed for the Reading Seed program for kids in local public schools. And that's a look at tonight's headlines.
President Obama promised new safeguards and more transparency for secret government surveillance programs, even as he defended their existence.
The president stressed the government is not interested in spying on ordinary citizens. We have excerpts from his White House news conference.
Then, despite recent challenging moments of diplomacy, the U.S. and Russia held high-level meetings in Washington. Margaret Warner recaps today's talks.
4 out of 10 streetlights don't work, and it takes an hour on average for Detroit police to respond to 911 calls. Ari Srinivasan looks at the Motor City's battle amid bankruptcy.
David Brooks and Ruth Marcus analyze the week's news.
And yes, those are goats in that graveyard, more than 100 of them. Kwame Holman tells us what they're doing in this historic Washington, D.C. cemetery.
That's all I had on tonight's NewsHour.
Tonight on Arizona Week, federal and state emergency service agencies met in Tempe this week. When it comes to the unthinkable, is Arizona ready?
I would say that that's really our Achilles heel, is individual and household preparedness, business preparedness.
That's tonight at 8:30 on PBS 6.
President Barack Obama visited Arizona this week to talk about the housing market and a recovering economy. Here to talk about the president's visit and other news of the week, Attorney Jeff Rogers, the former chairman of the Pima County Democratic Party, Tucson Tea Party founder Trent Humphries, and Tucson Hispanic Chamber of Commerce President Leah Marquez-Peterson. Thanks to all of you guys for being here. Leah, you were at the president's talk up in Phoenix. What did you think?
You know, it was an honor to see the president, especially that close up, in a high school auditorium. So there were a lot of people there with a lot of excitement and energy. He spoke, obviously, about the housing market, the importance of first-time home buyers, you know, reckless buyers and how we're recovering from that. I think his message resonated very well with a lot of the things that we're hearing from our members. He also talked about the importance of the rental market. So there's a lot of conversation about the fact that Arizona is slowly recovering, and I think that's the case, and I think we need to look at the mortgage markets in the future. So I applauded a lot of what President Obama said.
And Trent, the president offered some ideas on allowing people to refinance at today's interest rates and some other strategies for improving the housing market. What did you think of his general message?
Well, you know, I'm not a first-time home buyer, but I'm a recent home buyer again, and what I had to wade through to get a loan was insane. And I can't picture a lot of people pursuing that strategy, you know, at least, you know, middle-class people that are just trying to recover from the economy. So I think that it's one thing to talk about it and say things, but the trick is to balance out with the concerns of just repeating what we just did. You know, you start giving the credit out too easy and you start, you know, waiving some of the requirements and we'll end up right back where we were again. So it's a tough line, you know, and And I have to say, I almost have no confidence that the federal government has a plan to put that in place and do it right.
Jeff, what did you think of the president's?
Well, I think he's on the right track. I have to agree with both these guys in a way. The paperwork you've got to fill out right now to buy a home or to refinance is daunting. It's just daunting, and the requirements people have to go through. And so I think that he can through regulatory issues, fix some of that. But the refinance part, that's something that's going to have to come from Congress. And right now the House is just so dysfunctional. I don't see anything coming out of the House that would help these people. And interest rates are now starting to increase. So I'm a little doubtful whether or not we're going to get any relief in that area. Some of the other areas that he talked about are also a little bit iffy. I mean, right now, before the Great Recession, 40% of the houses were underwritten, the loans, and packaged by Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae. We're now up to almost 80% of them by that agency. So right now to just say, well, we want to privatize all of that, it's probably a good idea in the long run, but it's not going to be something that can happen overnight because suddenly you're going to have a market where people can't afford a 30-year mortgage, which is sort of what most people need, particularly first-time buyers are coming into the market. So we're going to have to look at it and be very careful about how we restructure the way that the loans themselves, when they get into the secondary market, are done. So I don't think we can just be flip about this. There's a couple bills in Congress that are bipartisan. Republicans and Democrats have joined together to back them that are interesting to look at. So I think eventually we do need to go in that direction because we can see that some of the loan practices and the packaging of the loans in the secondary market was really responsible for a lot of the Great Recession that we just went through.
And Trent, the president also met with Governor Brewer on the tarmac, and this meeting went a little bit better than their last one. Had a cordial meeting with her, but after the president left, she sent out a press release saying that the president was on the wrong track and that Arizona was actually the example to follow in terms of how to manage the economy. What did you think of that exchange?
Again, I made I'm not a biggest fan of Jan Brewer. I never really have been, but it's just politics. And sometimes I think people need to step back and say, what is best? And that's not just for Jan Brewer, but the president. I mean, the president made the comment a week ago saying that, well, we could put in the Keystone Pipeline, but it's only going to create 50 permanent jobs. Now, that's just fiction. So I think that people need, if we're going to really help the economy grow, people need to step back, get off of whatever ideological plane they're on, and say, what can we do to help the middle class of America? And I'm not really seeing any give and take from anybody. I mean, we're talking about issues that have nothing whatsoever the most important issues we discuss and talk about have nothing to do with helping the middle class recover right now. And this is the 18th pivot to jobs that Barack Obama's made. He needs to sit down, put together his job council he disbanded, and come up with a plan. And he needs to sit down with Republicans as well, not just come up with something behind the doors with other Democrats that just start to have payoffs and kickbacks and like the bills we're seeing. If we're going to really get together, people are going to have to just kind of swallow their pride a little bit and work together. And that's not happened.
Jeff, what do you think?
Well, here's the problem the president has is the House of Representatives is so dysfunctional. And the Republicans hate him so much that they will not do anything. They won't set aside their hatred for Obama to do what's right for America. And this jobs plan that he came up with by financing it through a cut in corporate tax rates, and this was a pretty good bargain that I believe Republicans would have accepted 5 years ago, even maybe 4 years ago. But right now, it's the politics of it are so dysfunctional that I don't think his jobs plan is going to go anywhere. The Republicans are just unwilling to look at what's right for the middle class and what will sustain growth and get people back to work. And so I'm not optimistic about that, but I thought it was a great idea. Our corporate tax rates do need to change. They need to be lower, and they need to be, and then loopholes need to be removed. And that's something Democrats and Republicans could all agree on a few years ago. But right now, just because it's the president's idea, it's bad for Republicans.
If it's the right thing to do, why can't we just do it without having a ton of strings attached to it? Well, we can do that if we finance all. No, just do it. If it's the right thing to do, do it.
Leo, what's the business community looking for?
I think what's the business community looking for? Okay, I was going to answer the Jan Brewer question. I would agree with Trent on the Jan Brewer question. The Governor Brewer, the political piece of this is always a little disheartening. President Obama did talk about the growing role of the FHA, the Consumer Protection Agency. What does that mean? That's kind of a gray area. I certainly plan to look more at that. In terms of the business community, though, I mean, housing starts, as housing grows, commercial development follows. So certainly housing and people being stabilized, and all that will do a great thing to improve the economy. Where it goes from there, let's see. It's hard to see so much of the politics engaged in as messaging or initiatives come about. I did see Republican elected leaders at President Obama's speech, and I was glad to see that there. President Obama also applauded Senator McCain and Senator Flake at this event for their work in the Gang of Eight and immigration reform. So that was good to hear also.
And one of the things he brought up about immigration reform was he said that would actually help the housing market as well.
He did. I mean, he tied that to one of the 5 key steps, I think, in getting this thing to actually be something that can be executed. People coming out and having legal status and having permanent citizenship, whatever that may include, and that ultimately leads to houses being rented, homes being purchased. I think that's just good for the economy. So I was glad to see him continue to push that in this public forum.
And Jeff, speaking of immigration reform, we saw the Dream 9 kids, some of them not really kids, some of them are in their 30s, but they were released from detention. These were the folks who crossed the border a few weeks ago. They now face a hearing in front of an immigration judge to find out what's going to happen. Can you tell us how this is going to play out?
Well, these things can take sometimes years to play out. They're often given multiple continuances in the process. For 3 of them who I might have mentioned last week or week before, that was very disturbing because these were people who are eligible for the deferred action sort of mini dream plan that the president has authorized. And part of that is that you must be in America continually throughout that entire period of time before you apply and get that status. And so these 3 people have interrupted that status. And so they may have sacrificed their ability to get in through the DREAM Act. Now the other 6 had nothing to lose because they were sort of dreamers who got frustrated and went home to Mexico and things didn't work out for them there and they wanted to come back and retry here. So, normally we associate requests for asylum with being, from an ethnic group or a religion or something that is being discriminated against in that country. So asylum requests being granted for people from Mexico are pretty few and far between. I think back in Indiana we would call it rare as hen's teeth. And I hope that these young kids, they were very courageous in doing what they did. I hope they're able to stay in America, but legally right now they don't have a whole lot of options. But as I said, these things tend to stretch out for a really long period of time.
Trent, what do you think should happen with these kids?
I think it was choreographed. I think the fix is in. I don't think that. I mean, obviously they took advice and they did do what they did, and there is a chance that they could pay a price for that. I don't think they're going to. I think that this was arranged in some ways before they even left or even did the thing. I mean, it's not something that they just came up with, in the middle of the night. Hey, let's do this. No, it was put together. It was made to be a stunt, a choreographed thing. And I think that what we're seeing right now is that it served its purpose. And I think that there will be a hearing. It may not be this week. It'll be a while, like Jeff said, but it'll work out for them.
Leah, your thoughts?
I was surprised to see them released in such kind of a timely manner. I think I'd said on your show previously that unfortunately the line had kind of been drawn in the sand. Jeff mentioned the legal aspects of it, and I really truly don't know what the ability of them to stay in the country is, but I was surprised by the timing.
All right, I want to talk about this dust-up between the Arizona GOP and Fred DuVal. It started when the Arizona Republican Party borrowed from the Most Interesting Man in the World campaign and dubbed Fred DuVal the least interesting man in the world, or most uninteresting man in the world. And the DuVal campaign turned around and raised about $11,000 off of that, saying he's already under attack. And then he sent a case of beer over there with a card of him dressed up as the most interesting man, redubbed himself the most electable man. And then the Republicans said that he was painting himself as a Hispanic in the card that he sent over there, and trying to appeal to Latinos. Jeff, what did you make of all of this?
Well, much ado about nothing. I mean, I think that the DuVal campaign wisely saw this as an opportunity to make fun of the Republicans and have a little fun with a national ad campaign that's gone viral in many other places. I mean, everyone's has their version of the most interesting man ad, and so I think the Republicans, being humorless as they are, had to somehow try to play a race card here, a card that never plays quite well for them in the long run. But you've got some indication that Fred is a very strong candidate. They are out attacking him now some 14 months before an election, 15 months before an election. So I think that shows that they're gravely concerned about what a candidate can be. I mean, you got to look at Fred as a guy who in the 80s was a guy who helped engineer our access program, which everyone recognizes as the most efficient Medicaid delivery system in America. In the 90s, he was on Clinton's staff in the White House and was one of the movers and shakers behind the tobacco settlement that brought over $1 billion for children's health care across the nation. And then, in the next decade, he's on the Board of Regents and leading, our universities through their toughest economic times ever, and he was able to, during that period of time, make it more seamless for people to go from community colleges to the University of Arizona or ASU or NAU. You can practically do it on a website now. So, this is a man that they see has a great deal of accomplishments behind him, and I think they're worried.
Trent, your thoughts
I don't
on
think
this
there's
whole
a lot
thing?
of great deal of fear of Fred DuVal. I mean, he's a serious man. He's probably the best candidate the Democrats could have probably put up, but it just, I don't think there's a lot of fear. They're not trying to attack him. I think this was somebody trying to put out a joke and then the joke back, and it is a much ado about nothing. There's serious things to discuss both ways, and I just think that we need to move on and talk about, not just because we're so far out for candidates right now. We need to talk about issues.
Leah, were you offended by
No,
Fred
I
DuVal's card to the Republican Party?
No, I thought it was kind of just political silliness. I agree with Trent. I'd rather be hearing about the issues right now.
Okay. And it does appear as though there's a new entry on the Republican side in the field. We've got Christine Jones, the former chief counsel for GoDaddy, is getting into this race, and we've already got State Treasurer Doug Ducey looking at running, Secretary of State Ken Bennett, State Senator Al Melvin. I think we've got former Maricopa County Attorney Andrew Thomas in this race. Trent, did I miss anybody here?
But if I were her, I would not hire the GoDaddy people to do her political ads. But yeah, I mean, it's, I've mentioned you privately. From what I'm seeing out there, Doug Ducey is way far out in the lead, and it's going to take, either a scandal on his part or something tremendous. From maybe saving a hijacked airplane from some of the other candidates to catch up with him right now.
And Jeff, what do you think?
When I look at Democratic candidates in the races, I'm always fond of seeing a woman in the race because, they tend to bring in a lot more crossover votes and tend to be very strong candidates. Now, I don't know how sharp she is, but if we do have, and say Matt Smith, the mayor of Mesa gets in this, you're going to have 4, 5, 6 men running, and you got one woman. As we were talking about a little earlier, that might really make a difference, and she might have a better chance than we think, especially if she's going to have any substantial financial backing.
That's right, Scott Smith from Mesa, and also Hugh Hallman. I think we forgot to mention him, former Tempe mayor, is already in the race. Leah, your thoughts of how this Republican side is shaping up here?
It's interesting. A lot of the business community worked with Doug Ducey during the last election with Prop 204, and he gathered a lot of support against that measure. So he's got some name awareness with us, and I think he was well respected during that last election cycle. Fred DuVal, I've met with also, very sharp gentleman. I think it's going to be those two.
All right. Pima County is spending as much as $280,000 to improve some soccer fields to lure Major League Soccer spring training. Trent, good idea, bad idea?
Well, look, I'm a Little League coach, and I read that article and found out they're going to be plowing under some baseball fields for that. And Tucson, first and foremost, is a baseball town, and secondly, a softball town. I mean, people, our girls here know more about softball probably than any of the girls in the United States. And for us to be plowing under fields for soccer fields, there has to be a better solution than that. And especially since those are the fields that I coach at, and they're always full during baseball season. They're not remaining fallow. So I would wonder, and this is some of the things that bounce around my head. Is there some kind of sour grapes because we lost baseball here? And if we're going to spend all this time luring, soccer spring training here, maybe we could just reach out and see if we get some of those baseball teams to come back too. Because I know that soccer's nice, but baseball would pay the bills. And I think that there needs to be some, because we foolishly squandered that opportunity before. I think, we need to approach that again and maybe put some effort into that, and as well as the soccer area as well.
Leah, your thoughts on soccer versus baseball?
Yeah, and I hate to pit them against one another, but I see the county sees great economic impact from growing our soccer in this community. The Hispanic community plays baseball and soccer, but I think we've had that lack of soccer fields, and and the soccer presence here. You've seen FC Tucson over the last couple of years have great success as they've done their Desert Diamond event every year. I think soccer makes sense. It's a shame to see it pitted one against the other. You'd hate to see baseball versus soccer and so on, but we need soccer in this community.
Jeff?
Well, I'm not a big soccer fan, and I love baseball. And when Paul Cunningham and some other people brought up this idea in 2010 of making this a soccer mecca, I was a little skeptical, but I think I've been proven completely wrong. I think this is a huge get for Tucson. It's been estimated that if we have 10 teams coming here for this tournament and for the training, that it's going to have an economic impact of $3.9 million to businesses and tourist industry here in Tucson. So, given all the money we, in 2020 hindsight, squandered on the baseball issue, this is just pennies on the dollar to bring these soccer teams in. And I think it's a great idea, and I think it's going to be a big success. And I applaud Huckleberry and the county board to join with the city of Tucson to promote this. I think it's going to be a big success.
And if I could also add, there's so much emphasis now on trade with Mexico. Certainly promoting the assets we have here into Sonora. And the Mexican community embraces soccer, and I think this would do quite a bit for the tourism dollars that we can bring to our community.
And Jeff, you think there's any shot of getting Major League Baseball spring training back in our town?
I don't think so. They've consolidated operations. Even in Florida, they've consolidated in a few communities, and they've consolidated the, what do they call it, the Grapefruit League out here into the Phoenix metro area. And so unless you can get 3 or 4 teams to commit to come back down here, then you don't have sort of the mass that's enough to make it worthwhile, because those teams up there are not going to travel down here for one team, and one team's not going to set up down here unless they've got 3 more teams to play with. So I think that right now you're looking at, if you can attract 4 teams and have 4 facilities, you could maybe do it. But I don't think it's, we're not going to have the will to do it, and we've been burned by baseball. In the past, we're still paying for the facilities on a bond package right now. So I don't think there's much stomach for it right now with taxpayers.
And Trent, the county also dumped Columbus Day in favor of Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, on its holiday calendar. Big deal?
I don't think Columbus cares. No, but I mean, look, outside of lawyers and people that work at the post office, maybe bankers, nobody. I bet you 75% of people couldn't even tell you what month Columbus Day is in. So yeah, I think it's probably a good. we can know about Columbus and 1492 and everything like that, and not have to have a holiday for it.
Leah?
I think the county administrator and his team interviewed or surveyed their employee base and said that was what they'd prefer. So I didn't. I guess think twice about their decision.
Not a big deal, Jeff?
No, it's not a big deal. I work downtown, and sometimes I come in on that Friday, and the courts will be open, but they're not really serving any place. The courthouse will be open, the city hall will be open, but it's probably the most unproductive work day of the year, except for the day you're filling your brackets out for the NCAA tournament. That's probably the only other horrible work day like that. So I think it's kind of a non-issue.
And Leah, the county is also looking to expand Tortolita Mountain Park, trying to capitalize off of what's left of the growing Smarter grants the state has, and matching some money with what the county has in order to purchase some state land up in the north side of Pima County. Good idea?
I haven't studied enough of that. I'll hold my opinion.
All right, Trent, what do you think?
Also, that's I just don't. I don't know if we should be in the business of acquiring land right now. We have potholes in our roads, and I know they maybe come from different pots, but I think the symbolism's still the same. We need to buckle down and really cover what the county's supposed to do right now. And if those opportunities come up where we just can't pass up, by all means take them. But I don't know if it'll ring right, especially as we're trying to pass a bond package.
And Jeff, this was a unanimous vote by the board.
Yeah,
even Allie Miller, who had campaigned against open space in her campaigns, voted in favor of this, and it is, of course, in her district up there.
This is beautiful, rare land that ought to be in the public realm. And on top of that, we have in Tucson and Pima County some of the least amount of park space of any community in America per person or per 100,000 people, and even Phoenix has twice as much as we have. So anytime we get a chance to add to the parks and recreation budget or the land that we can have, I think is probably a good idea if we can afford it, and the money is there because it's already been allocated by the voters.
And there's a little bit of a dust-up between the city and county over the preservation of Fort Lowell Historic Park over there. They're trying to rebuild some of the old fort. and the county was backing away from it when the city said they need to build a parking lot as well, and then the city has backed off of those demands. The right move by the city there?
Well, the city requires a parking lot, and the Disabilities Act, American Disabilities Act, requires that you have, at least for that size of facility, 4 parking spaces for handicapped. So they're going to have to be concrete or pavement. And so when the county looked at it and projected it out, it was an $80,000 to build it, which was over their budget. So I think people's egos got the better of them here, and they finally left their ego at the door and said, let's build it and worry about parking later. I'm hearing some people suggest that the county certainly ought to have enough money to build the 4 parking spaces, and then maybe the city just puts gravel down in the rest of it, and we live with that until we can afford to pave the whole parking lot. But either way, these are very rare structures. There's 3 of them that are going to have a canopy put over them, kind of like the Big House does in Casa Grande, and to just preserve them. And then there's one that's actually a building that can be renovated or historically, and it's a very significant building. I think it's called the Atkins House. It was an officer's quarter or something. And so it's a piece of our heritage, and we've got the money to save it. Let's save it, and when we're finished restoring it, let's worry about the parking later. I think that's probably what's going to happen here.
Trent, your thoughts?
It's a big dust up, and there are concerns. We'd like to improve our heritage. I just wish as much thought went into doing this, and time and arguments into the Grand Canyon University, which could have brought jobs here. I mean, look, we're spending time just getting a lot of coverage, and it's, they are important houses, but we've lost a lot of important houses. But, how good would it have been to have 1,000 jobs? If somebody would have stayed on that, I get that they couldn't have probably put it where they wanted it. But if people would have stayed on, there's no reason why somebody from the county shouldn't have been in their lobby every day until they got a better answer than what took place there. So,
and any thoughts on the historic preservation?
Yeah, I'm glad a variance was found. I think that oftentimes that kind of compromise needs to happen, whether it's a business in the county, a business in the city. I think it speaks to kind of a greater issue in terms of collaboration and communication between our 2 largest jurisdictions. And there's been talk for decades in our community about regional nature, regionalism, regional government, whatever you might want to call it, and that should be a whole show.
Jeff, I didn't want to leave tonight without mentioning Jeff Smith, the longtime columnist here in town, also a participant on the roundtable here in the past, passed away this week at his home in Patagonia at age 67, left a great mark on our community.
He really did. I thought he was one of the finest writers that I'd ever experienced. When my mom would teach her rhetoric and composition class at the University of Arizona, she would frequently use pieces that he had written because she thought he was had a masterful rhetorical style. And I thought the world of him. He was really, quite a gentleman. And he was, sort of an unabashed liberal in a way, but he was also kind of one of the biggest sort of, fighters for gun rights that was out there too. So he had a little bit of Emil Franzi in him. So he was certainly a character in this community, and he had a little bit of an in-your-face style that I think some people didn't like, but I loved it.
I think he will be missed by many fans and family and friends. And that is where we will have to leave things tonight. I'd like to thank my guests, and we will be right back with some closing thoughts. You can learn more about politics by visiting azpm.org or by following us on Facebook and Twitter. Stay tuned next for the News Hour, and then at 8:30, Arizona Week takes a look at whether Arizona is properly prepared for future emergencies. On Monday, AZ Illustrated Metro takes a look at the financial challenges facing the Marana School District. And join us here next Friday as we talk with Tucson Mayor Jonathan Rothschild and Pima County Supervisor Richard Elias. I'm Jim Ninsel. Thanks for watching and have a great weekend. That's our show for tonight, but you can learn more about politics by visiting azpm.org or by following us on Facebook and Twitter. I'm Jim Ninsel. Thanks for watching another edition of AZ Illustrated Politics.